Alright, welcome to this video. My name is Taylor Benchard, and in this video I want to talk to you about how to scale your agency from 6 figures to 7 figures using systems and processes, and most importantly, this one word we're going to talk relentlessly about in this video, which is called throughput. It's a very important word, and it has a lot to do with systems and processes. So, if you're running an agency and you have one satisfied client that you've provided a service to, this video applies to you. If you have 100 satisfied clients and you want to get to 200, meaning you want to go from 7 figures to 8 figures, vice versa, 6 figures to 7 figures, this video is going to be very important. This process is evergreen. It doesn't matter if you're doing $1 billion a month or $1 trillion. Every company in the world is relentlessly going through this process to optimize for this one word called throughput. So, let's apply it and let's get straight into it. First of all, let's talk about what throughput is. The basic definition of throughput is right here. It's the rate at which a system achieves its desired goal. Now this is very important because your business, your agency, it's a system. You have a global system, which is the agency, right? So the agency, this is essentially the global system right here. I'm calling it the pipeline because it's a bit more visual. The global view of your agency pipeline, but you can change this to say system, is essentially this. You have marketing, you have sales, and you have service delivery. Those are the 3 core components of any agency. And you know what, like you can probably break that down into different subsets and whatever, but just at a high level, there's these 3 elements. Marketing can be defined as the process of getting qualified leads. Sales can be defined as the process of closing those qualified leads. And service delivery can be defined as the process or system of delivering a quality service to make the client happy once they've paid you money. And so what happens is if you do your marketing properly, some leads are going to start to flow in. And if you get qualified leads, you're going to get into the sales process. And if you get into the sales process and you close a lead, you're going to get into the service delivery process. And this is an important visual because at every point in your pipeline, there is something called a bottleneck. The bottleneck in this example is right here at service delivery. And so this just basically means that essentially the system of the service delivery is shit. It's really inefficient. There's a bottleneck. There's something in there that's holding it back from being a lot more efficient than it could be. And essentially every company in the world is relentlessly trying to remove the bottlenecks from their system, which is their business, to allow it to go faster. By go faster, I just mean like scale quicker, have more profit, and generate more revenue and have more customers. And so you just have a pipeline, and essentially all you're trying to do is, increase the power of this tap, which comes down to marketing, and make it super efficient so that you can continuously flow a ridiculous amount of money through it 24/7. And if you're able to do that very well, you have a company like Amazon who has millions upon millions upon millions of really happy customers that absolutely love their product, which is fast delivery. You can buy anything on the world from their website. With pretty much you can refund anything and get a return anything. So throughput is really important because it measures the effectiveness of your value stream. Again, this is a little stream here, and this is the terminology they use in classic business school, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, it's still a good term. Now, it's measured in the form of units divided by time, okay? And I know we were getting a bit abstract earlier, so let's get more in the weeds and talk more detailed. Units divided by time, okay? So if you can run 100 units in here per month, your throughput is basically 100 clients per month, right? That's what you can currently manage with your agency pipeline. So wherever you're at right now with your agency, if you have 10 clients, if you have 15 clients, your current throughput is that per month, right? It's like 15 clients per month. Now, let's get a little bit more specific because that's really general. So if you're trying to properly measure your throughput, there's a lot of different throughputs that you can measure. So you need to clearly define an objective, okay? So what is the objective? Now at the global level, the throughput's very simple. It's just like how many clients can you manage per month? What's your profit per month? Your profit throughput is essentially how much profit you're making per month or per week or per year or whatever. But let's get more specific, because once you get more specific, that's when it starts to become, really powerful. And so if you look at like your service delivery throughput, essentially you're measuring how fast your business or your agency can take a client from unsatisfied to satisfied, okay? Because service delivery in the agency world is really just a matter of providing a good service that exceeds the client's expectations or meets the client's expectations. That's it. It does not need to be anything more than that. That is what a good service or a great service is. It meets the client's expectations or it exceeds it. And so the rate at which you can do that is your throughput, okay? So let's zoom in down here. Okay, let's pretend that this is like a subsystem. This is a local view of the service delivery pipeline, right? Because this is the global view. Now let's zoom in another dimension and let's go down to level 2 here and look at the local view. So let's pretend that this is actually the service pipeline, and what we're looking at is a bunch of steps here. So you have, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, obviously, when you go through the process of delivering your service to your client, it's a lot more steps than 4. For the purpose of this video, I'm making it 4 steps to make it very simple and easy to understand. In our agency, we have like 30 or 40 steps. I mean, it's not. I wish it was as simple as this. But let's just say that there's only 4 steps that you go through, okay, to deliver a service to a client. Now, what happens is when a client signs on, when they enter this service delivery pipeline, that means that sales had closed them, okay? The client has now paid you money, and they're not happy. They will be happy once they get to this point right here. So this is where they're gonna be happy, and this is where basically they're unhappy, because again, the reason why they're paying you is because they're not happy with something. There's something they're not satisfied with and they need it fixed. That's why they're paying you. As the client goes through this little stream, their value increases, which is why they paid you money, right? So for us in our agency, after like a month and a half of working with us, typically we can increase a client's sales by between $30,000 to some cases $300,000, $400,000 per month. So as time goes on, their revenue and their bottom line goes up. And that's because this value stream, it basically, again, it's a value stream. So it becomes more valuable as we go through this. But the point is that you have a throughput on this pipeline or this system, right? This service delivery system. And the throughput for everybody is different. Now for this example, you can see that the bottleneck is in step number 2. Okay, and it's very important to note that this is what most people don't understand. Most people think that if they come in here and they optimize step number 4, because step number 4 takes like a long period of time. They think step number 4 is really inefficient, and they optimize the hell out of step number 4, and they get it down to like half the time it takes to complete step number 4. But they didn't even realize that step number 2 was actually the bottleneck. Well, what's going to happen is your throughput does not change, okay? So your throughput will stay the exact same. So if your service delivery pipeline has a throughput of, let's just say 15 clients per month, that is what you can actually manage. Or let's just say it's 15 clients per every 100 hours. Again, because if you're running like an ad agency like myself, you're trying to keep these clients forever. So essentially you're looking at not necessarily clients per month, but you can look at a different dimension of clients per amount of hours to maintain on a monthly basis. So there's kind of 3 variables in there, but let's just say that this system can handle 15 clients, okay, by, let's say it's actually 10 clients to make this even simple, by 100 hours. So 10 clients divided by 100, that equals your actual throughput of this system. Now, it takes 100 hours because let's just make this very simple, and let's say that this took 25 hours, this took 50 hours, this takes 12.5, and this takes 12.5. So this step here takes 25 hours to accomplish. This step here takes 50, this one takes 12.5, this takes 12.5. And this is essentially for 10 clients total. Again, you could divide each of these by 10 and you'd get the actual time per client. But for the sake of this, let's look at it as a whole. So if you go and you try to make this like step 4 here, if you optimize this and you make this, instead of 12.5, you put in a lot of work, you really automated it, and you take this thing down to like 6 hours, okay, your throughput does not change. It is still 10 by 100 hours. Nothing changes. Now, why does nothing change? Partly just because of the fact that this is the actual bottleneck. So if you don't fix this thing here, the overall throughput really isn't going to change. Now, this is a one-dimensional video, so you would think that it's going to change, but we'll get into a more three-dimensional example here. But the point is that if you don't fix the bottleneck, the overall pipeline is actually not going to flow any faster, okay? So the purpose of this video and why it's so important is because your job as an agency owner or as the founder is to relentlessly zoom out to the global view of your agency pipeline. Identify the bottleneck that is holding back your throughput, because your throughput is essentially the scale of your business. It's the level of your business. If you're doing 6 figures, if you're doing $100,000 a year, your throughput is $100,000 per year, right? There's a bottleneck somewhere that's holding it back. If you're doing $1 million a year, if you're doing $83.5 thousand per month, or whatever it is, your throughput is $83.5 thousand per month. And the only way to take that to the next level and take it to $100 or $150 or $200,000 per month is to identify the bottleneck, fix it, and then zoom out again and identify the next bottleneck. Fix it, zoom out, identify the next bottleneck, fix it, zoom out, fix it, zoom out. So you're going through this process of relentlessly zooming in and zooming out of multiple different dimensions in multiple different areas of your agency constantly. And this is a difficult thing to wrap your mind around. For years, I was like, fuck, I don't really know what the best thing would be to do, but I feel like it's this, or I feel like it's that. And this is a problem because if you're not working on the most important thing that's going to have the greatest impact on the rest of your business, you're wasting your time, okay? If you've ever read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, it's like you should work on the one thing such that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary. And this is the bottleneck. The bottleneck is always the utmost important thing that you need to fix in your agency immediately. So let's come back to this. Your job, again, zoom out, look at the agency at the global view, okay? And then identify the bottleneck, zoom in, fix the bottleneck, zoom out, find the next bottleneck, okay? And it should be quite, like, sometimes, in the early beginning, it's gonna be pretty obvious. If you're doing $10,000 per month and you only have 2 clients or 3 clients, your bottleneck is most likely in marketing or sales, and it's probably marketing, okay? And because personally, when I was by myself in my agency, I was able to get to like $25,000 per month with myself and like a virtual assistant, okay? I was the pipeline. I was everything, okay? And in the beginning, when I was at $5,000 or $10,000 per month, I knew that I had more time, okay? So like my bottleneck was not here, it was here at marketing because I just couldn't figure out how to get more clients in the beginning. So when you're first starting out, your bottleneck is always marketing and sales, okay? When you have like 1 or 2 clients and you're just by yourself, it's always here. It's not gonna be in service delivery, okay? This is what a lot of people make the mistake of. They just spend relentless amounts of hours on service delivery and they just completely forget about marketing and sales. And they stay stuck at 10, 20, 30, 40K a month for a long time. And it happened to myself, so I'm talking from personal experience. But the point is that depending on what stage you're at, if you're doing $50,000 or $100,000 per month, it's likely gonna be a mix of marketing and sales or service delivery. But predominantly it becomes service delivery in the long run, especially when you're doing like $100,000, $150,000 per month. That becomes an issue in most agencies because you see the classic profit margin percentage is like 12%. It's terrible. I've talked to quite a few agency owners doing $500,000, $1 million a month, and they're talking about hitting 12% profit margin at the end of the month, 13%, and that's actually pretty good. That's terrible, and that's terrible because they have a huge bottleneck right here in the service delivery, and it's super freaking inefficient. This is what happens with full service agencies. The profits just deteriorate in the long run as they scale, okay? So the revenue goes like this, profit goes like that, and that is a very classic thing. It's like a paradox that most people don't really understand, and it's because they don't really understand throughput, okay? So with that being said, hopefully you start to understand the importance of this little metric here, throughput, and I highly recommend you Google it to understand it on a deeper level. And let's go one more level deep into this thing, which is like this is more so what an actual SOP or a actual process or system looks like. Not so much an SOP because this is just high level task to task. But let's imagine that your service delivery process looks like this. Okay, it's pretty simple. We only have 5 specific tasks here. Each of these rectangles represents a task. Now, what's important to note is that each of these cannot be done, like for example, this task here cannot be started until this task is finished. So what you have is you have the predecessor of this is this, right? So you cannot start this until you have finished this. Now, there's this thing in project management and in engineering, and it's called the critical path. Now, the critical path is basically the pathway that takes the longest period of time to get to the output. Now, remember how earlier I was telling you that if you optimize this, but you don't optimize the bottleneck, it's not going to make any difference to the overall output? This will help you understand that more, because this one's really, it's too one-dimensional to even understand that. So let's imagine here that what we have is, let's assign the times to each of these. So let's assume this is like days. So let's say that this takes, let's actually, let's take that takes 1 hour. This takes let's say that takes 2 hours. This one takes 1, and then we'll say this takes 3, and that takes 1. Okay, so let's say that this is an hour process. Okay, so what we're looking at is a very simple process. It only has 2 paths where you can get from start to finish. So there's this path here, it's 1, 2, 1, okay? 1 hour, 2 hours, and 1 hour. Now, it's basically a 3-step task. Now, if we want to really do this properly, for those of you who've been through this process, and you can use like the whole like 3 things like this, and you can time the actual late start, late finish, early start, early finish. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just Google like critical path method if you go to like school. I never went to school, but I've read some textbooks on this stuff, and it actually is quite useful. But anyways, what you have here is, let's say this is task A, this is task B, this is task C, this is task D, and this is task E, okay? So you have task B and C are both dependent on A being finished. These 2 cannot start until A is finished, okay? Now that's important to note because this is where we're going to get into critical path and optimizing throughput. So this path here, A, B, and E, is one path to reach the exit, right? So A, B, and E is one path. So we have A, B, and E. And the total path length is 3 hours, okay? So this is 3 hours. And then what we have here is we have A, C, D, and E. This is the other pathway to get to the output, which is a happy client. Again, this is an unhappy client. This is a happy client that are flowing through this process. So we have A, C, D, and E is the other process. A, C, D, and E. And the time it takes to finish these 4 tasks is 4, 5, and 6. So we have 6 hours and we have 3 hours, okay? Cool. So the question here is, what is the critical path? The critical path is the pathway that takes the longest. So obviously this pathway here is the critical path. Now, this is an important thing to note, because what we're saying here is that if you go in and you think that, oh, the bottleneck is number 2 or whatever, like B, and you try to optimize the hell out of B, and you basically, for example, like get this thing down to a half an hour, or let's just say you get this thing down to like 1 instead of 2, okay? So you get that thing down to 1 instead of 2. The overall process is still 6 hours, okay? So you have 1 hour, 1, 4, 5, and 6. This is what I'm saying, what I'm saying, that like if you don't optimize something that is on the critical path, you don't actually improve the throughput. It doesn't matter if you get this thing down to 1 minute, okay? If you get that thing down to like 1 minute and you optimize the hell out of this thing, pretty much down to like nothing, where it's super fast, your throughput still does not change. It's still 6 hours. So you need to always, always, always optimize a task that is on the critical path. Otherwise, your throughput does not fucking change. This is what most people don't understand. They can't wrap their minds around this. They can't understand why isn't my agency scaling? It's probably because you're optimizing something that's not on the critical path. It's probably because, I mean, first of all, you probably don't even know what the critical path is. And I struggled with this for a long time. I'm not saying that like people are, you know, crazy for not knowing this shit. I literally just discovered this very recently, but I have been aware of this to a certain degree for like a year now, but I've never been able to properly articulate it using words until I discovered this thing right here, throughput. And that was I was like, wow, this is freaking amazing. So hopefully this has given you a paradigm shift and you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. So the next question is, okay, what do you do, right? So now we're here and now you know that to optimize your throughput, you need to optimize a task that is on the critical path, okay? So I always talk about this thing called the digital brain. The digital brain is essentially your giant system that outlines your entire agency for service delivery. It doesn't really talk about marketing or sales. It's more so just about service delivery because this is the component that takes a lot of time and energy in our agency, and we've optimized it, and I'm still optimizing the hell out of it and trying to get it down and increase the throughput. But what you want to do is, first of all, you want to map out the entire system of your agency, okay? If you know that the bottleneck is in service delivery, you need to build out a giant system or process. I call it a digital brain. It's going to look something like this, okay? And you need to map it out and you need to time each individual task, okay? Now there's going to be a theoretical time, which is like TT. This is the actual like terms that they use in this thing. And then there's going to be actual time, which is AT. And so each of these things is going to have theoretical time, actual time, okay? So when you're going through and you're mapping out the overall process for service delivery and you're going through and creating this mind map or a flow chart, whatever you want to call it, you're going to have the expected times. Then when someone goes through it and does it, if it's just you and your agency, great. Like then it's really unbiased. You have to do the work. You're going to be timing yourself and you can set the standard for anybody else that's going to be coming after you. And that's nice. But if you don't, if you have a team of people, they're going to have to go through the process and tell you, hey, it took me this long. Okay, and then you can go through the process too to double check it and compare the times and figure out why it took them that long to make sure that that's actually a reasonable amount of time. Then you can write down the actual time it took, and then you can map the total pathways. And then what you can do is you can map the critical path. And once you've mapped the critical path, you can identify the task on the critical path that has the most potential to be optimized. So C here takes 3 hours. I mean, it's the one that takes the longest. If you come in here and you identify that, hey, this process takes 3 fucking hours, there's no way it should take 3 hours, you can get that thing down to 1 hour, fantastic. Guess what? You have officially improved the throughput of this system to 1 unit per 4 hours, which is a lot better than 1 unit per 6 hours. It's actually a 25% or a 33% increase in efficiency. So again, it's important to go through that process, mind map everything out, build a giant flow chart, time every process, identify the critical path, identify the bottleneck on the critical path, optimize it, zoom out, and find the next bottleneck, zoom in, fix it, zoom out, and this is the process that you're going to be going through until you die. I'm not even joking. And I think it's actually a really exciting thing to understand this because, again, most people can get to 6 figures. Most people cannot get to 7 figures. And the reason why is because anybody can reach 6 figures and maintain 6 figures by themselves. Okay, very few people will get to 7 figures because to get to 7 figures, you need to be an operator. You need to be a systems thinker. You need to be process driven, all right? And the reason why is because when you scale, when you go from just 5 little clients and it's just you to 6 employees and 50 clients, everything starts to change. Now all of a sudden you're managing people. Now all of a sudden there's standards, because it's not just you, there's lots of other people. Now all of a sudden you need to start to understand how the hell these systems work and how you can actually take your business to the next level. Like, what is the best thing you should work on? I mean, you got like 50 clients, you got 5 fucking services, you got 4 million different like tasks that need to be done to improve those, to actually do those 5 services. And there's a lot that goes on, okay? And if you don't understand processes, if you don't understand systems, if you're not driven to have the mindset to think with systems and processes, you will not be able to sustain 7 figures with healthy margins. It's that simple. And this goes for you too. If you're doing $500,000 a month and you have 11% profit margin, you won't be able to sustain it. And honestly, I would rather do 7 figures. I would rather do $100,000 per month with a 50% margin than $500,000 with a 10% margin. It comes to the same profit. It's just that one company has a much better profit throughput than the other one. And this is, again, this is a paradox, right? So if my profit throughput is $50,000 per month and my revenue throughput is $100,000 per month, you know, compared to an agency that has a revenue throughput of $500,000 per month but a profit throughput of $50,000 per month, it's just because I understand throughput and I'm optimizing my agency for the maximum profit throughput. Very simple. So, getting off topic here, I'm kind of going on a rant. These are the summary that you should understand. Throughput, Google it, understand it. Very, 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 very important term. And it's really good that you just dive into that world and start to understand it. Critical path. This is basically what comes out of throughput. To optimize your throughput, you need to understand the critical path. Bottleneck. A bottleneck is basically, it's the most inefficient process along the critical path, okay? Like I said, this was the bottleneck here, number C. Now, it's not always the longest time, okay? Sometimes, you know, you've got it down to, sometimes it may be the longest time task along the critical path, but it's really optimized. And there's something down here which is half the time, but it's super inefficient. So really, you're looking for the most inefficient process along the critical path. It's not always the longest duration, okay? So then you have the infinite process of optimizing your value stream, all right? This is a never-ending process. You'll be 90 years old on your deathbed and you're still gonna be doing this. This is why it's so fun. And this is why I think this is probably one of the most important videos I've made on the topic of service delivery and reaching 7 or 8 figures, is because this never ends. It's something that literally every single business owner on earth, agency owners especially, should be aware of, because it never goes away and it's an evergreen principle. It's not like some marketing tactic that's gonna die in 6 months. Next, become a master operator. That's it. That's very simple. If you want to get to 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures and sustain it, you need to become a master operator. And a master operator is a systems process-driven thinker. That's it, all right? So with that being said, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, or swing me a message on Facebook, whatever you think. I would love to hear your thoughts on this and if you enjoyed it as much as I did. And last but not least, if you want help with your agency, scaling it, automating it, I have a program. It gives you much more in-depth stuff than this. And if you like this, you'd love that. So lastly, hit that subscribe button below. I'll see you next week. This video is coming out late because I've been so busy working on this kind of stuff. And yeah, hit that subscribe button below. I'll see you next week on Monday. Ciao.